We continue now at the top of Daf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph and Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 23a. On the previous summit, the Gemara was discussing Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that Ein Dam Mevatel Dam, blood is not Mevatel other blood. The idea is that since it's Min B'mino, it's of the same kind, therefore there is no bittul, there is no nullification. And the Gemara asked on that opinion of Rabbi Yehuda from Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, because Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah says that in a situation of kometz that gets mixed up with other carbon mincha, so such a kometz, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is disqualified because the amount of oil in the kometz of a regular carbon mincha and other carbon minchas that are totally burned, it's a different amount of oil, and therefore as it gets mixed together, it ends up that it's too much oil in the mincha that's supposed to have less oil and too little oil in the mincha that is supposed to have more oil, and therefore that causes a disqualification. And the question of the Gemara was, why should that cause a disqualification? Aren't we dealing here with min b'mino? It's of the same kind, it's all oil getting mixed together, and therefore we should say that there is no bittul, there is no nullification. And the Gemara now continues and answers, Amar Rava, Rava says, Kasava Rabbi Yehuda holds, Kol shu min b'mino v'davar acher. If you have a situation of min b'mino, they are of the same kind, but then there is something else there as well. And Rashi explains, min b'mino shemen v'shemen, you have oil mixing with oil. V'davar acher, then you have something else as well. In this case, soles. In this case, you have flour as well. So when you have min b'mino v'davar acher, salik es mino kamisha eno, you have to remove that which is of the same kind as if it's not there, and we say v'she'eno mino, and that which is not of the same kind, rabba olav is the majority over it, umevatlo, and it nullifies it. And Rashi explains, Salik es mino shemen, to kamatz mishum nedava, kimisha eno, you have to remove the oil from the equation. V'nimsa solso shel kometz rabba, al shemen haniv labo, it comes out that the soles, the flour of the kometz, is more, it is the majority over the shemen that's absorbed in it, umevatla, and therefore it nullifies it, and that's why there's nullification, that's why it's problematic in this case. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Itmar, it was stated the following, Machlokas Amoraim, Kometz de Minchas Chote, the Kometz of the Minchas Chote, the Mincha of the sinner, Shashimno, where oil was added. It's not supposed to have oil, but oil was added. So we have a Machlokas Amoraim. Again, Rabbi Yochanan Omer Pasul. Rabbi Yochanan says it's Pasul, it's disqualified. Reish Lakish Omer, but Reish Lakish says, Hu Atzbo, Meshach Shecho Bishiore Halogum Aleu, even the carbon of the Minchas Chote, they would put some oil from the remnant oil of the lug of oil on it and offer it up in that fashion, and therefore it's no problem if oil was added. But the Gemara continues and asks, Vaksib, but isn't it written in the pasuk? Lo yasam aleh shemen v'lo yitin aleh levon. It says, don't place any oil, don't place any levon, any frankincense upon it. And so therefore, how could it be that they would add some oil? And the Gemara answers to that, Ahu shelo yikba lo shemen kechavro. There the pasuk just means you shouldn't designate oil specifically for it, as we do for other carbon minchas. And Rashi explains, Sheshimno shenosan olav shemen la'achar shekamsa. We're talking about a situation where oil was placed on it after the kamitza, the fistful, was taken. And again, Reish Lakish said, Hu atzmo kilomar tchilas mitzvah. Really, it is a lechatchila mitzvah. Sheyashav shenu lekometz b'shiyori mincha, that you should put a little bit of oil on the kometz from the remnant of the mincha, echon min halugin, from the remnant of one of the lugs of oil. V'chol shekein dim shimno kosher. And so certainly, if oil was added, it is kosher. And so again, the Gemara then asked, well, what's the meaning of the pasuk? And the Gemara said that the pasuk means to say shelo yikba lo shemen, and Rashi explains shelo yikba lo shemen ba'od shelo nikmitza, means you shouldn't designate oil before the fistful was taken. Avalachar kamitza, but after the fistful is taken, im shimna ktsas, if a little oil is added, kosher, then it is kosher. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei Rabbi Yochanan l'Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan asked Reish Lakish a question from the following Brisa. Chorev shenisarev bebolol, if you have a carbon mincha that's dry, that does not have oil, that gets mixed with a carbon mincha that does have oil, that's mixed with oil. So the Tanna Kama says, Yakriv, it can be offered on the Mizbeach, it's not a problem. Rabbi Yehuda says, Lo Yakriv, that it cannot be offered on the Mizbeach. And so the Gemara says, my lav is it not? Kometz de minchas chote. We're talking here about the kometz, the fistful of the minchas chote, the mincha of the sinner, which is not supposed to have any oil at all. Diyarev bekometz de minchas nadav, and it gets mixed with the kometz, with the fistful of a minchas nadav, which does have oil. And therefore we see over here a machlokas tanoim, but we certainly see a possibility that it is disqualified, and that would be a question against Reish Lakish, because Reish Lakish said that minchas chote, even if oil is added, it shouldn't be a problem at all. There should not be a machlokas tanoim over here at all. And Rashi explains, Yakriv again, and the Rabbanan, they say that it can be offered. The Rabbanan l'tamayu, the Rabbanan here are following their opinion. The Olin, since they all ascend to the Mizbeach, ein mevatlin zeh, there's a general rule that Olin are not mevatel one another, they don't nullify one another, therefore there is no problem. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer lo Yakriv, and Rabbi Yehuda says that it should not be offered, because again, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with the Rabbanan and says that there could be bittul over here. But the point is, va'afilu Rabbanan, even the Rabbanan who say Yakriv that it can be offered, lo amri yikrav ela mishum de'olin ein mevatlin zeh. The only reason they say it can be offered is because there's no bittul. There's a general rule: olin are not mevatel one another. V'heicha de'isei aminchas nedava shadin alei. Therefore, if there's no bittul, so then we say wherever the oil is, we just associate it with a minchas nedava that's supposed to have oil. Avolim nafal shemen bekometz dechote. But let's say, for example, oil would simply fall in the kometz of the sinner. So then afilu Rabbanan lo yikrav. Even according to the Rabbanan, it apparently would be problematic. It shouldn't be offered, and that's a question against Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish should say that's no problem if a little oil is added to the minchas chote. It's not problematic according to Reish Lakish. That's why this brisa poses a difficulty against Reish Lakish. And again, the Gemara now continues. Again, the Gemara said, aren't we talking about minchas chote mixed with minchas nedava? And now the Gemara answers, that's not the case at all. Lo, no. Minchas parim ve'elim b'minchas kevasim. We're talking here where the two carbon minchas that got mixed together, they both have oil, but they just have different amounts of oil, and that essentially is the exact same machlokes in our Mishnah. If they have different amounts of oil, that's when Rabbi Yehuda says that it's problematic, and the Rabbanan say that it's not problematic. It has nothing to do with minchas chote, therefore it's not a question against Reish Lakish. The Gemara continues and asks, but that can't be, because the Brisa already speaks about that case separately. The Brisa says, minchas parim ve'elim b'minchas kevasim. The mincha that accompanies the bulls and the rams, it gets mixed with the mincha that accompanies the sheep. V'charev shenesarev b'bolin, and a dry mincha that gets mixed with a carbon mincha that has oil. Again, the machlokes, yikrav, according to the Rabbanan, is offered, and Rabbi Yehuda Omer lo yikrav. Rabbi Yehuda says it's not offered, and so therefore clearly it is two separate cases. You can't say that charev shenesari bebolol is the same case as minchas parim ve'elim b'minchas kevasim, and the Gemara says it's not true. It is the same case. Perushe kam mefarish la. The Brisa is just elaborating, explaining what charev shenesari bebolol means. Charev shenesari bebolol means minchas parim ve'elim getting mixed with minchas kevasim. And Rashi explains minchas nesachim shel parim ve'elim. When it comes to the minchas nesachim of parim and elim, of bulls and rams, so that's chareva legabe minchas nesachim kevis. That's considered dry relative to the minchas nesachim of the sheep, because again, there's more oil, relatively speaking, by the keves. The keves have a shlosha lugan li'isaron. When it comes to the keves, it's 3 lug of oil per isaron. T'chsib parsha shlach lecha, as it's written in parsha shlach lecha, soles isaron bolul berevias ahin shemen. It says you have an isaron of soles, and that's berevias ahin, a quarter of a hin of oil, which is 3 lug of oil, because v'hin shneim asar lugan, because a hin is 12 lug, and so therefore a quarter of 12 is going to be 3. V'shel parim ve'elim, when it comes to the carbon mincha accompanying parim and elim, shnei lugan li'saron, that's 2 lug of oil for every isaron, so in proportionally it's less. T'chsev b'par bolul b'shemen chatzi ahin, because it says by the par that it's mixed in oil chatzi ahin, dahainu shisha lugan, that comes out to shisha lugan. And over there, ushloshe isronim solas, it's not 1 isaron, it's actually 3 isaron, and so therefore it comes out that it's 2 lug for every isaron. Uve'elim solas shtei esronim, and when it comes to rams, it is a flour of 2 esronim, bolul b'shemen shlishis ahin, it ends up being mixed in oil shlishis ahin, a third of a hin. Ve'echad denesarva minchas parim b'minchas kevasim. So when you have a situation of minchas parim mixed with minchas kevasim, hasam v'adei lo yikrav, there certainly should not be offered, as we said in the Mishnah, according to Rabbi Yehuda misham denimtza so avaraka, because again you're mixing the thicker one with the thinner one. Aval kometz de minchas chote, but if you'd have the kometz of the minchas chote, which is not supposed to have any oil, but a little oil according to Reish Lakish is not a problem. The yarib bekometz de minchas nedava, if that gets mixed with the kometz of the minchas nedava yikrav, then it can be offered. And we will note that the Shita Mekubetzes does bring an alternate girsa here in Rashi. Instead of Vehechad Nesarva Minchas Parim b'Minchas Kvasim, it has Vehechad Nesarva Minchas Elim b'Minchas Kvasim. But again, it's the same basic idea. We're talking about carbon minchas with different amounts of oil, and there already we do have a Machlokas Tanoim. And Rashi continues, Prushe Kamefarish, even though the Brisa seems to have 2 separate cases, really one line in the Brisa is elaborating on the other. V'hachi Kamar, and it's saying as follows, Minchas Parim b'Shel Kvasim, when you have Minchas Parim, gets mixed up with minchas kevasim, dahainu chorev shenesara bebolol. That is like a dry mincha getting mixed up with a mincha with oil, because relatively speaking, one has more oil than the other. The blue in zemizeh, where they absorb from one another. So again, afilu hachi l'rabbanon yikrav. Nevertheless, according to the rabbanon, it can still be offered. Dein olin mevatlin zeh, as we said, that which ascends the mizbeach, it's not mevatl one another. Rabbi Yehuda Omer lo yikrav. Rabbi Yehuda says it's not offered. Desheino mino rabba olav umevatlo, because if it's not of the same kind, so then the majority is going to create nullification, and that's why it's problematic according to Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara continues, Boy Rava. Rava asks the following question: Kometz shemitza shamno al gabe eitzim. The kometz, the fistful of the karba mincha, if its oil was squeezed on top of the wood, mahu, what's the halacha over there? Chibure olin, that which is connected to that which ascends on the mizbeach, ka'olin and damu, is that the same as that which ascends? And then it would be kosher, it would be fine. Olav ka'olin damu, or is it not as if it ascends? And then it would be problematic. And Rashi explains, al gabe eitzim, again, the oil is squeezed on top of the wood. V'hiniach hakometz olav, and then the kometz is placed on top of that oil. Mahu, what's the halacha? Mi have a chaser kometz, is it as if the kometz is missing oil? Olo or not, maybe that oil is connected to the kometz. Mi amrinan chibure olin, do we say that which is connected to that which ascends on the mizbeach? Mashu mechaber hashemen lekometz, that which connects the oil to the kometz, shechozer v'nosan hakometz alo eitzim, because the kometz is now being placed upon the wood. Ka'olin damu, is that as if it ascended, meaning ki'ilu have Hashem and muvla bekometz, is it as if the oil is absorbed in the kometz? V'kosher, and it would be kosher. Olav ka'olin, or it's not as if it is ascending. Upasal, and it's disqualified. We'll read a little further on in Rashi as well. Rashi gives a second explanation of the question of the Gemara. Lashon acher, another way of understanding kometz shemitza shamno al gabe eitzim. Again, you have the kometz where the oil is squeezed on the wood. Mahu, what's the halacha? Mi boy lahaktir eitzim imha kometz. Do we have to burn the wood with the kometz so that we essentially connect it? Olo or not, chibure olin, that which connects, that which ascends, shemen shemechaber lekometz, the shemen which connects to the kometz, ka'olin damu, it's as if it ascends. Vim eino maktir, so if he doesn't burn the wood together, have a kekometz chaser, then it's kekometz chaser. Olo ka'olin, or it's not as if it ascends. Velo ichbas lan, and therefore we don't care. And again, that's the second understanding of the question of the Gemara. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Ravina le Ravashi. Ravina said to Ravashi, Lav hainu de Rabbi Yochanan v'Reish Lakish, isn't this the machlokes that we find between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish as follows? The Itmar, because it was stated the following machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish: Hamala Aver, if one offers up a limb, this is talking about offering it up outside the Beis HaMikdash, we're talking about liability of Mala Bachutz. If one offers up the Aver she'ein bo kezayis, and it doesn't have a kezayis, if it's not a kezayis, one should not be liable. However, ve'etzem mashlimo lekezayis, but the bone that's connected to the limb, that does complete the requisite shear of a kezayis. So that's a machlokas. Rabbi Yochanan amar chayev. Rabbi Yochanan says we count the bone as well, and therefore he's liable. Reish Lakish amar pater. Reish Lakish says pater. Rabbi Yochanan amar chayev. Rabbi Yochanan says chayev. For this exact reason, chibure olin ka'olin damu, that which is attached to that which ascends is considered like it's ascending. Reish Lakish amar pater. And Reish Lakish says pater exempt. Chibure olin lav ka'olin damu, that which is attached doesn't count. So the bone which is attached to the aver does not count and does not create that liability. And the Gemara says really the questions here are unconnected, because Tiboy Rabbi Yochanan v'Tiboy Reish Lakish, the question can be asked whether we're following Rabbi Yochanan in the case of Mala Aver Bachutz, or whether we're following Reish Lakish in the case of Mala Aver Bachutz. And the Gemara continues and explains, Tiboy Rabbi Yochanan, it's a question according to Rabbi Yochanan. Adkan lo kamer Rabbi Yochanan hasam, Rabbi Yochanan only said chayev over there, ela be'etzem demina debasru, that's just by the bone, which is really all of the same kind, it's all part of the meat. Aval hay delav mina de kometsu, but here where it's really disconnected in this case, the oil and the mincha, lo, we wouldn't say that. O dilma, or maybe afilo the Reish Lakish, we can go the other way, even according to Reish Lakish, lo amar ella be'etzem, he only said that they're disconnected by the bone, devar mifrashu, there, that's something that can separate, vi parish, and if it does separate, lav mitzvah lahadure, there's no mitzvah to return it to the mizbeach. Avol shemen, but the oil, the lav bar mifrashu, it's not something that can really separate, lo, we wouldn't say that. O dilma lo shnor, maybe there is no difference between these two cases, and the Gemara says, Teku, the Gemara leaves this as a question. And Rashi Rashi explains, Hamale b'chutz, again talking about offering up the aver outside the mikdash. Olin is basar, the olin over here is the meat. Chibure olin etzem, and that which is attached to that which ascends refers to the bone. Shemen lav min solas, oil is not of the same kind as the flour. And then the Gemara suggested, etzem iparish, if the bone would separate, kagon poken, that's talking when they get dislodged from the fires of the Mizbeach. Lav mitzvah lahadure, it's not a mitzvah to return it to the fires of the Mizbeach. But Parakid Hanasha, this is in Chulin, in Parakid Hanasha, Hilkach, Lav Ka'olin Damu. Therefore, it's not as if it's part of that which ascends on the Mizbeach. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Shtei Menachos Shelo Nikmetzu, 2 carbon minchas that the kometz was not taken, V'nesarvu zu b'zu, and they get mixed with one another. Im yachol likmotz mizu b'fnei atzma umizu b'fnei atzma, if the kometz can be taken from this one by itself independently and from the other carbon mincha by itself independently, so then ksheros, then they are kosher. V'im la, but if not, if they're mixed to the extent where the kometz can't be taken independently for each mincha on its own, so then psulos, then they are disqualified. And the Mishnah continues, kometz shenesarev b'mincha shelo nikmetzu. Let's say you have a fistful and it gets mixed with a korban mincha that the kometz was not taken. So lo yakdir, it should not be burned on the mizbeach. V'im hikdir, and if it is burned on the mizbeach, zu shenikmetza, the korban mincha where the kometz was taken, o l'labailim, that will fulfill the obligation of the owner. V'zu shelo nikmetza, but the one that the kometz was not taken, lo o l'labailim, it will not ascend on behalf of the owner. And the Mishnah continues, Nesarev kumtza b'shirel. Let's say the kometz gets mixed up with the remainder of its own mincha. O b'shirel shel chaverta, or let's say it gets mixed up with the remainder of a different carbon mincha. So lo yakter, he shouldn't burn that on the mizbeach. V'im hikter, if he does burn it on the mizbeach, o l'labailim, it does ascend on behalf of the owner. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chisda says, Nevela betela b'shchuta, Nevela is bottle, it is nullified in shchuta. We'll see Rashi in a moment. She'i efshar l'shchuta shetayasa Nevela. It's impossible for the shchuta to become Nevela. But the other way around, shchuta ain't a betela b'Nevela, but shchuta is not bottle, it's not nullified in Nevela. She'efshar l'Nevela shetayasa shchuta. It's possible for Nevela to become shchuta, delchi misracha, because when it spoils, parcha tumasa, then the tumah goes away. And Rashi explains, Nevela betela b'shchuta, that's the first part of the statement of Rav Chisda, Nevela is nullified in shchuta. It means as follows, Im yesh shtichatichos shchuta. Let's say there are 2 cuts of meat from a shchuta, from a slaughtered animal. V'achas nevela, and there's one from nevela. The nevela is the one that's going to have tumah, it's going to be impure. Ve'ein yodua ezuhi betela bahen, and you don't know which one it is, so then betela bahen, it is going to be nullified, meaning the nevela is nullified in the shchuta. It's nullified through the majority. Shem naga bi'achas mechatichos, if he touches one of the cuts of meat, eino tamei. The point is, he's not going to be tamei. The amrinan shchuta, we say that what he touched is of the majority, it is the shchuta. She'i efshar l'shchuta shetayasa nevela. It's impossible for the shchuta to become nevela. And the point is, v'havale min b'she'eino mino. It therefore is considered to not be of the same kind. Uvatal l'divrei hakol, and it's batal according to everyone. The point over here is that we look at the shchuta, which is the one that's mevatel. It is doing the nullifying. It's the majority, since it cannot become nevela, so therefore we say it's min b'she'eino mino, and it is batal. But the other way around, the shchuta ain't a betela b'nevela. If the majority is nevela, the shchuta is not going to be batal in the nevela. Im yesh shtei chatichos nevela, if you have 2 cuts of nevela, v'achas shchuta and 1 shchuta b'nei, that's between them, ain't a betela, it's not nullified. V'im naga achas mehen b'truma, and therefore if one would touch, let's say one of them touches truma, eino nisrefes aleh, so then it is not going to be burned, elatol, and rather we say it's suspended, so to speak. The shema zuhi ashchuta, we say maybe it is the shchuta. We say the shchuta is not going to be batal in the nevela, and so therefore essentially we're going to be more lenient in a certain sense in the situation. We're not going to say that the shchuta is batal. It is possible it is the shchuta. Why? She'efshar l'nevela shetayasa shchuta, because again we look at the mevatel over here, the majority over here is the nevela, and it's possible that would become shchuta. L'kamei mefarish taima de Rav Chisda, and later the Gemara is going to explain the reasoning of Rav Chisda. To azal basar mevatel, again as we just said, Rav Chisda follows the mevatel. V'hoel v'yefshar l'rov lios kemuat, since the rov cannot become like the minority, have a kemin b'she'eino mino, then we say it's min b'she'eino mino. V'lo azlinan basar batel, and we don't follow the batel, that which is being nullified. T'afagav de'efshar l'muat lios kemeruba, even though it's possible for the minority to become like the majority, that doesn't matter. Have a kemin b'she'eino mino, it's still considered to be min b'she'eino mino, and so therefore again in a situation of nevela b'tela b'shchuta, the majority is the shchuta cannot become nevela, and so therefore we say it is min b'she'eno mino, and we say that it is batal. But shchuta is eina b'teila nevela, because there we have to look at the nevela. That's the majority. The nevela can become shchuta, because again, if it would spoil, the tumah would go away, and so therefore over there we say there is no bittul, there is no nullification. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Chanina Amar, Rabbi Chanina says, Kol she'efshar lo lios kamo, anytime it can be like it, so eino batal, it is not going to be nullified. V'chol she'i efshar lo lios kamo, but if it cannot become like it, so batal, then it is going to be nullified. And Rashi explains, first Rashi again back on Rav Chisda, when it comes to nevela, it can become like shchuta because parcha tumah, as we said, the tumah goes away. Techsiv lager asher b'sharecha titanenu, it says it's given to the ger, it's given to the converts. Ve'amrinan bebechoros harauya lager, we say in bechoros it has to be fit for the ger that he's able to eat it, and then kriya nevela, then it's called nevela, and so therefore if it spoils, that's not rauya lager. And again, Rabbi Chanina says, Kol she'efshar lo lebatel dahainu muat. Rabbi Chanina says we can look at the minority, the thing that's being nullified. If that's possible, lios kamo shel mevatel, if that can be like that which is nullifying, so eino batel, then it is not going to be batel, it won't be nullified. Hilgach, therefore, nevela eina betela b'shchuta. Therefore, he's arguing against Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said, nevela is batel b'shchuta when the shchuta is the minority, so we have to look at the shchuta. The shchuta can't be nevela, is what Rav Chisda said. But now Rabbi Chanina argues, no, you look at the nevela, you look at the minority, and so therefore the nevela is not batel in the shchuta. Avol shchuta betela b'nevela. But the other way around, shchuta would be batel in nevela. If shchuta is the minority, then it would be batel. That's min b'she'eno mino. The yafshel shchuta shetayas nevela, because again, shchuta cannot become nevela. V'im naga achas min achatichos b'truma. If one of the cuts of meat would touch truma, nisrefas, it would be burned on that account. Rabbi Chanina azil basar batel, because Rabbi Chanina follows that which is being nullified, that which is the minority. And the Gemara continues, Aliba Daman, this machlokas amoraim of whether we follow the mevatel or that which is being batel, this machlokas amoraim between Rav Chisda and Rav Chanina, who are they following among the Tanoim? Aliba de Rabbanan, if they're following the Rabbanan, ha'amri, but the Rabbanan, they said earlier, Olenhu, de lo mevatli ahadadi, that which ascends, when everything is ascending the Mizbeach, there we say, there is no bittel, there's no nullification. Avol min b'mino batel, but the Rabbanan actually say that it's if it's of the same kind, it is nullified, and clearly over here, the entire premise of the discussion is that min b'mino is not batel, and therefore we have to determine whether it's min b'mino or min b'she'eno mino. Now, liba de Rabbi Yehuda, if we're saying that we're following Rabbi Yehuda over here, v'ha bat, and Rashi explains, ha min b'mino batel, but min b'mino is batel, hilkach bein nevela b'shchuta, bein shchuta b'nevela b'teilin. Therefore, according to that, whether it's nevela and shchuta or shchuta and nevela, we should say min b'mino is batel according to the Rabbanan, so it doesn't seem that we are following the Rabbanan, and if we're following Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara will continue, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis.